sometimes we'll come from work tired or from school, or after we're finished with the housework, we will come home and want to relax and want to find someone to pat us on the head and say how good we are. We want someone to comfort us, to tell us that we're so great, that we're appreciated. You are appreciated. I would like to be that place for you right now. I would like to protect you, to comfort you, to help you relax and forget about your trouble, whatever it is. As she speaks these words, she gazes into my eyes and gently massages my temples. Of course, she's not really touching me, at least not in the traditional sense, but my body nonetheless responds to the intimate encounter, sending tingles across my scalp. Those tingles are known as ASMR, or Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, which is a relaxing, tingling, sort of shivery sensation that some people experience in response to certain auditory triggers or haptic or visual stimuli. The term was coined by an online community that has grown exponentially within the last decade and which currently enjoys a very strong following on YouTube, where ASMRtists such as Gentle Whispering, whose real name is Maria, upload new content every day. These videos are specialized audio and visual recording techniques to produce the sensation in listener viewers, often through the use of immersive, intimate role-play scenarios which specialize in the simple trigger known as personal attention. And that's these videos where they're actually looking at you and interacting with the frame of the camera, so it looks like they're actually touching you.
What does it mean?
It stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, which is a pseudoscientific term that the community established to make it sound more legitimate, because before that people referred to it as a brain orgasm or head orgasm. So now, in a polemical YouTube video posted last year by the British comedian Russell Brand, he compares this emerging internet phenomenon of ASMR videos to JOI porn, which is jerk-off instruction porn, and he declared that ASMR is just female porn. Now, despite that, this launched this very vehement response from the community that said this is absolutely not sexual in any way. And this is an example of someone who guest blogged on a sex toy blog to talk about ASMR on a sex blog to say how it wasn't sex. So there's this overlap between the two communities, but there's still this rhetorical tension between the people who say that it does sort of produce an arousal sensation and people who assert that it is very, very distinctly not sexual. And then this is from a YouTube artist named Tony Bomboni, and this is from his personal blog, where he spends about 3 pages explaining how his most recent video, which was about mouth sounds, might sound like kissing, but it's definitely not sexual. So the sexuality of ASMR videos is a contentious issue within the community, which vehemently defends the party line that these videos are not sexual and strictly regulates the content posted in their forums. Elsewhere, I have argued that this stance may stem from the desire to legitimize the pleasure of ASMR and asserted that this points to a larger issue. Not that ASMR videos might in fact be sexual, but that the very term sex refers only to specific, narrowly defined bodily choreographies amongst arbitrarily specified bodies and equally arbitrarily restricted relationships and configurations. I have shown, therefore, how ASMR videos can broaden the scope of what we see as sexuality and provide a means for bodies to come into intimate contact with other bodies in particular ways, and thus serve as an outlet for people to enjoy those sexual pleasures alongside of what is deemed appropriate in the mainstream. I'm not going to be talking about that today, but this paper builds on that preliminary work and represents the initial stages of my dissertation research on mediated intimacies in ASMR, live-action role-playing games, and porn. So today I'm presenting the first steps of a content analysis of the array of ASMR videos available on YouTube in order to show the gendering and sexualization of this genre. Following this conference's call to think through gendered spaces, I will be analyzing the gendering and sexualization of 2 distinct spheres: the digital space of YouTube and this particular ASMR community, as well as the gendered spaces depicted in this subgenre of roleplay and personal attention videos. This paper outlines trends that indicate that the most successful ASMRtists are young, conventionally attractive white women, and that their most popular roleplay settings are doctors' offices, salons, and retail environments. This suggests that the ostensibly non-sexual pleasures of ASMR are nonetheless gendered in ways that parallel the tropes of mainstream heterosexual porn, and that women ASMRtists are more likely to establish intimacy through the performance of care. Because ASMR is a relatively new phenomenon and has only been in the mainstream eye for about 5 years, little research yet exists on the topic. Interest is growing, however, and particularly in the scientific communities. One paper published earlier this year presents the findings from a survey of emotional and physical traits of people who listen to and or watch ASMR media, and several forthcoming projects are investigating ASMR in fields such as psychology, neuroscience, biology, and linguistics. However, humanistic research on the genre is virtually non-existent, and it is this gap in the emergent literature that I aim to fill. Whereas most extant scholarship on ASMR focuses on the consumers of this media, as a performance scholar and in performance studies, I'm specifically interested in contributing an analysis of the performers and performances. So, this is just an example of Russell Brand on the top left and him explaining the similarities between porn and the ASMR videos he sees, and then down here on the right is one of the top 10 ASMR performers at this time at least, and her response to it. So today I just wanted to share a few of my preliminary findings on this, and these are my top 10 ASMR artists that I've gleaned. For right now, I'm just using ASMR's algorithms for what they count as the most relevant or the people who have the most view counts, and excuse me. So I've ranked all the people, and I did a few different search terms, and then we took the averages, and I wanted to show you who I came up with. So we have Gentle Whispering, who I opened with. Heather Feather ASMR is another really popular one who I won't be talking about today, but you can see the difference between them is a pretty large gap. So Maria is pretty significant because she has over 500,000 subscribers, which is more than anyone else by far. So then I'm going to jump down to ASMR requests. Her real name is Allie, and I did the 3 search terms. So I looked for ASMR generally, and then I also looked for ASMR roleplay, and then I also looked for ASMR personal attention. And Allie is in the top 10 across all of those search results, so she's important to my research specifically. She's also our top earner on Patreon. This is a way that a lot of these ASMR artists make money, and she makes over $1,000 a month through her donations. And then the last person I'm going to look at today is Massage ASMR. His real name is Dimitri, and he is the top performing male ASMR artist at this time. So we'll jump over to gender in the top 10. And the first thing that's pretty obvious is that most of them are women. And so you'll see here we have Maria over here on the left. She's the one I started out with. And then we only have Dimitri, and then Ephemeral Rift in the bottom right. His head is a lampshade there. And he also doesn't disclose his real name anywhere. So he's kind of an outlier. And that's why I just wanted to mention a couple of honorable mentions who didn't make it. This is Ephemeral Rift here in a performance of ASMR for men. So he really plays with these gendered tropes, and he's interested in kind of subverting those through his performances. And then there's also Tony Bomboni, who I shared a quote with from before, and as you can see in this scenario, he's playing a fairy. He does makeup tutorials, he's playing with a doll right there, he's in like a fantasy scenario. So his work is really, really interesting, as he's the only top performing ASMR artist who clearly codes as queer, and nobody else does, at least in the top performers. Bear in mind that when you do a search for ASMR, you get over 3 million results right now, so that's why I'm trying to look at the top performers to get a sense of what the landscape of ASMR looks like right now. That's also Ephemeral Rift. That's one of his characters named Margaret, so he plays with the tropes that the female performers do, but in this sort of creepy way. He does horror films. And that's Tony Bomboni, out of makeup, but still performing a role that's typically done with the female performers here, where he's doing an eyebrow shaping consultation. But he didn't make it into my top 10, so I don't get to talk about him today. So that was gender. So now we're jumping over to race, and the other really big thing that we noticed is that nearly all ASMR artists, or at least the most popular ones, are white. We have Fairy Shar ASMR. Her name is Charlotte down here on the right. She's the only one who at least doesn't appear or code as white. And after the top 10, there's really nobody else. We don't see any black ASMR performers at all. We don't see any Latino performers at all either. And so then I was also interested in looking at age, and this one I'm guessing on, guys, because I couldn't find people's actual birth dates, but in terms of people generally looking under 35 or over 35, Everyone's pretty young. Most of them, when they get to talk about their personal lives and stuff, they actually tell you that they're still in college or just out of college, so we know that most of them are in their 20s. A few ASMR artists are teenagers, but most of them are over 18, it seems. Dimitri and Emma, or Whispers Red ASMR in the bottom right, they're the only ones who appear to be a little bit older than that, but still it's a very small minority. Thank you. Oh, I have to speed through this. So I'm going to mention nationality as well. And we have 6 out of 10 are American, and that's significant because we do see an emphasis in people talking about ASMR for a preference for people with accents. So we have Maria, who I mentioned before, and Olivia here. Maria is Russian, and Olivia is Czech, and then Dimitri is Australian, and Emma is British. And so this may point to a few different things, one of which might be the international scope of the phenomenon, but I think it also shows that this is still participating in a tradition of fetishization of the gendered body. And so then we get to 8 out of 10 speak English as their first language, and so Maria and Olivia will actually do videos in their native languages sometimes, but almost all the comments on those videos are still from English-speaking viewers. So I don't know why this got cut off and looks so strange, but it really got messed up. But I wanted to show you the content analysis I did of Maria's videos. And so we see that only about a quarter of them are role play videos, but you can see the top 3 versions of them are customer service, doctor's offices, and salons. And so those are the 3 that really stand out in hers. And for those you'll see some variety, like sometimes she's a doctor, sometimes she's a nurse, sometimes she's a secretary in a doctor's office, but those are still the ones that we see emerging over and over again. So I'm actually going to, in interest of time, I'm going to skip over my close reading of each of the videos so I can show you more of the others. Then Allie is really known for her roleplay videos, so she has a whole lot more, as you can see. But her top categories still include the salon, the doctor's office, and customer service. But she has also now integrated some more sci-fi and fantasy genres, which I wasn't expecting, and that's interesting to see as well. But then we see a really big difference when we skip over to Dimitri's, who actually had so many categories that they are cut off on the screen. They don't even fit on there. But he had almost 30 were doctors. That's what's cut off at the top. And then 20-something or so are massage and ASMR genre. And by that I mean he's role-playing a scenario where he's massaging you or doing an ASMR session with you. Now his real-life profession is as a massage therapist. And so this reflects that he is less likely to engage in fantasy role-play scenarios and more likely to perform things that are what he is in real life. And the doctor roles that he plays, he's always a doctor. He never plays a nurse. He never plays any other sort of thing in the doctor's office. It's always Dr. Dimitri. That's his character. But he does show a little bit more versatility in playing with these other genres. But I also wanted to mention that he's the only one here who played with gambling, which I thought was really interesting, and also Dungeons and Dragons, which overlaps with my other interests, so I was fascinated with that. So he doesn't do the sci-fi and fantasy genres like Allie does. He's not performing a fairy, but he will perform a dungeon master leading you through a fantasy scenario. So we do see a pretty distinct difference between the way the female performers are showing their care and attention through these role-play scenarios and the way Dimitri is. How am I on time right now? Perfect. All right, so I'll jump down here to my conclusion. So if ASMR is described by those who experience it as intensely pleasurable and relaxing, and if ASMRtists craft their videos with the deliberate intention of producing this automatic, visceral, pleasurable sensation, then it is indisputable that ASMR is above all concerned with the production of pleasure. In this way, it is not difficult to note the parallels between ASMR videos and pornography, another body genre, to borrow the term from Linda Williams, that employs genre-specific techniques with the intention of producing an automatic, visceral, pleasurable sensation in the viewer. So with porn, it's trying to produce arousal and orgasm, and with ASMR, it's trying to produce ASMR. So bearing this in mind, it should not be overlooked that most of the bodies interacting with the objects in these videos are young, conventionally attractive white women, as I showed earlier. I believe it is no coincidence that spa treatments and medical exams and retail spaces, as I learned doing this content analysis, are the two most popular genres, or three, of ASMR roleplay, because all appeal, or the first two appeal to the pleasure of being cared for, and the third does as well, although in a less direct contact way. So furthermore, I propose that the reason that these scenarios are so much more popular than scenes in which the viewer is being cared for by a lover or a parent is because we already have access to those forms of intimacy in our day-to-day lives. So although our doctors and estheticians may know our bodies more intimately than most people in our lives, they're still considered strangers, and interactions with them must therefore follow strict protocol. But what ASMR roleplay scenarios offer is the opportunity not only to experience the pleasures of those intimacies, but to fully enjoy them. So what all of the roleplay scenarios of Maria, Ali, and Dimitri have in common is that the performers nearly always depict strangers or acquaintances. Videos where the performers portray lovers, family members, or friends are rare. And this is one way in which the genre follows the tropes of mainstream heterosexual porn, and one of the ways in which I suggest that ASMR is able to produce and facilitate access to new pleasures. However, it is important to note that although ASMR is able to produce new pleasures and facilitate new intimacies, it is by no means utopian, as the modes of intimacy it facilitates are not equally accessible or pleasurable to all bodies. This is evidenced by the heavily gendered spaces within the genre, as this content analysis has shown. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I'd be happy to chat more about it in Q&A if you have any questions. Thank you.
We have one panelist who has dropped